all of us probably ran for the first time when we were 2-ish. And, we don't really remember it, but it must have been exhilarating, like just to like be able to move your body in that way. Cause it's like running is controlled falling, it's like, but it's fast, even as a toddler, you're like, holy Moses, look at what I'm doing. And like, that's why you ran a second time, because you wanted that feeling again, like just like simply like the gift of being able to move your body in that way was like amazing when you were 2. And I think, when you kind of come full circle, if you just keep running and running and running and running, it's like, wow, my body can still do this thing. And so I think, that's kind of a spiritual mindset. Hi, I'm Matt Fitzgerald, and I'm a renegade.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Renegade Podcast. Each episode we dare to practice the lost art of conversation to better understand what it means to run, be a runner, be a human. What does it really mean to master something you love, especially when life takes it away and then hands you a new way to give it back? Today, we are honored to sit with one of the most prolific and insightful voices in endurance sports, Matt Fitzgerald, a lifelong runner who's completed over 50 marathons, a best-selling author of over 30 books, including the groundbreaking 80-20 running, which reshaped how so many of us train smarter by going slower, and now his latest, Chasing Mastery, where he distills 25 powerful lessons to help athletes unlock their true potential beyond just workouts. Matt is also a dedicated coach, co-founder of 80-20 Endurance, and the visionary behind Dream Run Camp in Flagstaff, a kind of fantasy immersion where everyday runners live and train like pros under his guidance. But this conversation goes deeper. We talk about his raw, ongoing struggle with long COVID, how a post-viral illness stole his ability to run freely after decades of chasing the horizon, and how, instead of quitting, he channeled that fire into helping others chase theirs. You're going to walk away with practical, battle-tested wisdom, how to run easy in order to run faster and farther, the real science and feel behind 80-20 method, and direct, no BS advice from Matt on building sustainable mastery, even when your body and mind throws curveballs. It's vulnerable, it's wise, it's profoundly human. If you ever wondered how to keep growing when the path gets blocked, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Renegade Podcast. I'm Todd, and with me,
good old Uncle Mark.
Each episode, we lace up our shoes and we go for a couple easy miles to learn, to explore, to try to figure out this thing, running in life.
Be a little bit better. A little bit better is all we can ask for, right?
We bring you Renegade at no cost to you with the help of our great friends of the podcast and our sponsor. And our main sponsor, Thrive Protein. You know what I love about Thrive Protein? Let me tell you what I love about it. My favorite thing I've been testing out. I love their electrolytes. I love Thrive electrolytes. You got sodium, you got potassium, calcium, magnesium. You mix that in your water bottle and you head out for a run. It's cold outside right now. Everyone knows that if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and your water doesn't freeze. Not only does it taste good, your water doesn't freeze, and it gives you essential minerals that you need because you're sweating them out.
Sounds great. Converted me. It's got all the right EMs in it. It's good.
And
calcium.
And Jillian sent us this. They got their new Endura Fuel. So everything that you like about their electrolyte plus a 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
I don't think there's anything better out there than that. And Todd, is there a promotion on Thrive? Promotional code?
Yes. Yes, there is. You can use the code RUNEGADE for 20% off your order. That's RUNEGADE. You get 20% off.
Wonderful.
Runkle, it's Wednesday night. It's February. It feels like it's February 57th, but We always get to enjoy a non-alcoholic brew with your crew, my running buddy, my partner in crime, Runkle Mark. Party on, Mark.
Party on, Todd. I don't have the hyena tonight, but I do have a good old athletic brew. Run Wild, because that's the only way I know how to run. It's wild. So if you're snacking on something mild, but craving something wild, there's an athletic brew for you.
If you're out enjoying an 80-20 run or running the dream with your crew, there's an hyena brew for you. Hey now. Matt, welcome.
Hey.
Hi, Matt.
Good to be here.
Hey, Matt.
Good to
Hey, Matt, just welcome to the podcast. I would say you're one of the most prolific authors that we've had on the podcast.
that's
over
true.
what, 25, 30 books? Like I was digging into Chasing Mastery, right? Let's unpack Chasing Mastery a little bit with the Renegade listeners. It's titled Chasing Mastery, 25 Lessons to Cultivate Your Full Potential in Endurance Sport. So maybe you can introduce the core thesis of the book to the Renegade listeners, and then what motivated you to write on Chasing Mastery?
Sure thing. Yeah. So, I'm deep enough into my career as a coach now that I can kind of like look back and reflect and just look at the body of evidence and ask, what am I all about? And I did that. I started doing that several years ago. And my answer to that question was, I am all about mastery. And for me, running, what's beautiful about running is it can be so many different things for different athletes. But for me, it was always a sport first. I mean, I got way into the spiritual aspects of running, but it's a sport. And what I love about running is that if with the right mindset, it's very democratic. You can get a ticket to the same ride the Olympians get if you just give yourself permission at any age, at any level of ability. And what gets because you look at the Olympians and you're like, oh, they're so much more genetically endowed than I am, and they have shoe contracts, but they're also mastering their sport. And that's like the piece of it that is completely separate from, mastery is fulfillment of potential. Talent is merely potential. So for me, I gave myself that permission to get a ticket to that ride. Even though, by the time I was 15, I knew I wasn't going to the Olympics. I still wanted to go full send and just see what my limit actually was. And usually you have to be gifted and, get all the encouragement that gifted young runners get to take that journey, but you can take it, and so mastery is just all about, being in control. The essence of every sport is control of the body and space, and running is no different. And, the mastery component of being really good at running is just like being in control of the things you can control. There's a swagger that comes with it. That, being an athlete is just a series of decisions, from pacing decisions to, do I fire my coach decisions? And how you get to fulfill your potential is by making a lot of good decisions and not a lot of bad ones. Nobody starts there, but the journey toward mastery is the journey toward being able to gain more and more control, and then the confidence and swagger that comes with that. So that is how I view my role as a coach. I know not all coaches view their role that way, but to the extent that an athlete I'm coaching is willing, I want to move them as close to full mastery of their sport as they can get.
As you were saying that, Matt, I had a quote I wrote down, and it's amazing, the serendipity of life here. But it was a quote from Marcus Aurelius that says, "You have power over your mind, but not of outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So when you think about that Stoic principle of the internal control, focus on the things that you can actually control and let go of the things that are out of your control, how have you seen that play into the sustaining a long-term relationship with running? And how, that view, how does that overweigh or is that a better way than viewing short-term external validation, that internal drive, focus on the things you can control versus the admiration and the race outcomes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the thing is, like, when you're in control, you're in control. So it's not just that you're better at pacing because you're in control. It's also that you're better at adapting, actually. I'm living this out now. I started running competitively when I was 11. I'll be 55 in May. And, the only reason I'm still running now, with passion is that I've been able to, change my why as I grow and age. And that is really about, just like having kind of like a process focus. Like, process focus behooves you within a competitive season where you're not getting ahead of yourself. You're trying to perfect the steps that you're taking, versus like hoping for a certain outcome at the end. Like you count on the outcome resulting from taking the process seriously. And then the same thing happens on broader time scales as well. It's like, oh wow, it seems like I'm not setting PRs anymore, and yet like there's still kind of a fire in me. So like, how do I, if I just keep trying to do it exactly the way I've done up to this point, I'm going to burn out. But like, so how can I pivot? How can I adapt? How can I adjust? Just based on, just kind of knowing myself and knowing what I need as a runner. So I think that's what ties it all together. Is like when, I say control, a psychologist would say self-regulation, like just being able to, just have goals, and think helpful thoughts and feel helpful feelings and take helpful actions, not 100% perfectly, but like more of that, is all you're really doing at any scope in the running journey.
But interesting. And something I just want to go back to what you said initially there too, was how you had the evolution there of the spiritual side of things for you. So did you find, or have you found that over your years of running, that it's the spiritual side of, your outlook towards running and yourself has increased then over time too? Or how has that played into how you've developed?
Yes, definitely. And that's the norm, actually. For runners who start off being very competitively focused, but are still running 40 years later, that's the evolution. I mean, there are exceptions, and it's not like it's, these things are orthogonal. They can be both and, you can like be like totally digging the spiritual dimension of running and do it through a competitive focus. In fact, that's always actually been my way, because competition is really just an excuse to put myself in a place where I'm about to break. And I think that is where, like, for me, the most exciting spiritual opportunities open up. Because like the stage is just cleared out of like all the usual clutter, and the only thing left on it is a mirror, and it's a soul mirror. And you just like, you get in those action crises deep in, an endurance race. And it's just you looking at your soul in a mirror on an empty stage. And it's like, what am I made of? What am I bringing to this moment? How am I limited? Will I let myself down? And so, but I think there's also a way to like just go beyond that and still, I anticipate becoming less and less competitive as I get older. And I do think like the spiritual aspect will only grow. And, like it's very individual, but for me, I went through years of long COVID and, couldn't run at all. So running was just taken away from me. Like right around the time I turned 50. So the age becomes a factor. And so, just like, I had someone who come to Dream Run Camp. He was at the time the oldest person who'd ever come here at 76. And he told me, Matt, I run because I can. And like, that's kind of spiritual. I mean, I think that's kind of what he meant. It just, you think about, all of us probably ran for the first time when we were 2-ish. And, we don't really remember it, but it must have been exhilarating, like just to like be able to move your body in that way, because it's like running is controlled falling, it's like, but it's fast, even as a toddler, you're like, holy Moses, look at what I'm doing. And like, that's why you ran a second time, because you wanted that feeling again, like just like simply like the gift of being able to move your body in that way was like amazing when you were two. And I think, when you kind of come full circle, like if you just keep running and running and running and running, it's like, wow, my body can still do this thing. And so I think, that's kind of a spiritual mindset.
The Runegade is proud to be sponsored by Thrive Protein. Power your runs and fuel your endurance with Thrive Protein, the premier Canadian-made supplement brand crafted for endurance athletes. This family-owned brand uses a science-based approach to develop high-quality electrolytes, a carbon electrolyte powder, creatine, vegan protein powders, whey protein, and super greens. And they are constantly innovating. Recently brought to market EnduraFuel, hydration and fuel all in one. Each serving offers 30 grams of carbs in a 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose, 400 milligrams of sodium, 150 milligrams of potassium, 25 milligrams of calcium, and magnesium, replenishing all the elements that you're sweating out during your efforts. And it gives your body the energy it needs to perform at its peak. Plus, the lemonade flavor tastes amazing. Thrive's clean products fuels your body with natural ingredients and no artificial fillers. Designed to boost recovery, enhance endurance, and keep you strong on the trails or the roads. Thrive is perfect for any athlete chasing any distance. Visit thriveprotein.ca and use the code RUNEGADE for 20% off your order. Thrive Protein. Fuel your relentless pursuit of adventure.
Do you see that mindset could be played out in chasing mastery? You talk about the simplicity of the Kenyan athletes, right? Something along the lines of their dominance seems to come from a very simple kind of life and training philosophy. Do you see any similarities with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like if living the simple Kenyan life was like a necessary requirement to having a spiritual experience of running, like we'd be screwed, in America. So I think, I mean, there are like different paths, but, I've been there and seen what it's like. And, it just makes sense because, the descriptor for that way of living, especially, I mean, there's like the Kenyan way of living, and then there's the Kenyan sub-elite to elite runner way of living, which is really just amplifies the same, it's, and monastic is the word, like when there's, I do like 5 things in a day and none of them involve electronics. Like there's a reason that, monasteries create those conditions, right? And abbeys and other places of like spiritual refuge, when you like commit yourself and, like, yeah. I mean, you think of like the Japanese running monks, even they do combine all that, but it's just like and even Thoreau and going to Walden, simplify. It's like that. Like if we just pare things down, it's part of the reason you fast for spiritual reasons or whatever. You just pare things down. It's a kind of a way of like getting alone on the stage with the soul mirror. You know what I mean? Just like reduce things, to boil things down to their essence and see what happens.
So we have very curious listeners, and even for myself, could you unpack a little bit more what it means to live more as a Kenyan, and the aspects of their everyday life that has contributed into superstars as they are on the running scene?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a where do I begin, but like when I want to make it like an impress like an American curious American, like on like what's different and what's going on there. I remember a moment, it was probably my second day. So I spent 2 weeks there, but I started in Nairobi, the big city, and went to the National Museum there, just like kind of just be a tourist. Mm-hmm. It's a great museum, by the way. But we arrived there like right around noon, and there's like this like big building where the museum is housed, and there's like a lot of office workers that work inside it. And it's noon, and it's lunchtime. So right as we're going in, all the office workers like are filing out for their lunch break, and they all just arrange themselves on a patch of lawn, lie down, and nap outside.
I can get behind that. That's great.
In the middle of the day. But it was like, it was like classic culture shock, but like, I mean, culture shock implies a negative. Like I was like amazed and like filled with admiration, and also like deeply ashamed. I'm like, oh my God, like I thought my culture was sane, and like, here's this thing that's like shocking on its face, but just seems so deeply sane. You know what I mean? Like go outside and have a nap in the middle of the day.
Breaking it down to the most simplest form, like mastery lies in the basics. Maybe that's like the takeaway. And would you say that you always were that way, Matt? Or how has your evolution changed as a runner and as a writer? Because I would say this, you have over 25 books, you're authored and co-authored. Maybe I'm going to put it out there that there's a time in your life that you wrote a book because you're interested in something, and that's kind of altered your path as you went along. But like when along that, where in that journey did you really finally realize that simplicity was the key to unlocking performance gains?
I think honestly, I mean, in terms of like just my overall like mental perspective on everything, like I've always been this guy. Like I've always, and it runs in my family too, like always like kind of like big picture, like holistic pragmatism is how I often try to describe like my outlook. So like I'm not like one for ideology, like, and that is also the elite mindset too. It's just like, I just want to know what works. Like, it doesn't have to be a system. Like, it doesn't have to be, have any sizzle to it. Just like, let me know what works. So like, yeah, I've always had that orientation, but of course, like I wasn't born knowing everything. So, in terms of like, I will say, just like as a pragmatist, I started to geek out on sports science when I was a teenager still, like reading like big thick books about, running science when I'm in high school. But like, I always took like my first and last cues from the elites, like, because I'm like, they're the best. They're not idiots. Like that, presumably, they don't have everything figured out, but presumably they basically know what they're doing. So like, I want to know what they're doing. And that was my pole star from a very early age. And like, if you go down that path, it will lead you toward like an appreciation of simplicity, cause like, those ruthless pragmatists, where it's just like, like they have no loyalty to any method. It's like they try a method. If it doesn't serve them, out you go. Which is the opposite of like the ideological bent. Like that will lead you toward like, you're just going to discover, the Kenyans are lucky in a sense in that like, there's no option to overcomplicate things. They have a lot of headwinds, of a different nature, but like, that's not one of them. Whereas for us in our culture, you kind of have to find your way there, but because it is, because it simply works better from a performance perspective to keep things simple and focused on the basics, like the best athletes are going to find their way there, and they're going to leave tracks, that athletes like me can then follow along. So no real epiphany in that regard along the way, but I'm not trying to pretend I was born knowing everything I know now.
Well, you've had the blessing to running the dream, this book. I love this book. And you got to spend a summer with the Northern Arizona elite team. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what was the most surprising thing that the elites were doing or weren't doing that kind of blew your mind when you went out there? Like, I'm sure there's lots of things, but like, what's one thing that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there were a few. I did discover like during my time there that like by and large, by my estimation, I was the most uptight person on the team. So like there were like 12 or 13 real pros and then me, and they seemed like less tightly wound than me, just like kind of more relaxed. And I found that interesting, and just statistically, it just didn't seem like it could be a coincidence, but it does make sense. You know what I mean? Because like that's like I talked about how like mastery is all about control, and there's a swagger that comes with control. I think that's kind of what it is. It's just and what you realize is like part of the recipe is not sweating small stuff. That is like, if you go to Kenya, that is one of the most striking things you will notice about Hakuna Matata, right? Like that is like, yes. Yeah. But like, that's a Kenyan staple idiom. And like, but that's not just like something they say, like you see it, like I don't have time for the stories, but like, things that would have just had me blowing a gasket, they were just so relaxed about. Yeah, so it's part of it.
And you got super fast too when you're out there. Did you not run your personal best in the fall at Chicago at 2:47 at
yeah
mid-40s?
Yeah, that was very surprising. Like I did what ended up happening performance wise for me at the end of that, I told people was impossible at the beginning of the process. So, like I thought I knew stuff. Like I said, I've been studying sports science since I was 15, and I'm like, I know what aging does to the human body, and like there's no way. And yet I did it. So, you can't help but learn a lot in the process of blowing your own mind.
I imagine, I'm just thinking a little bit more about here and technology and running against Strava and trying to do better than I did the week before, and just all the technology, different kind of apparel, shoes, every little thing that kind of adds to the run that you're trying to keep track of in your mind here. And I can see how breaking it down to a more simple level can really just allow you to just hone in and key in on certain aspects of your run that might be going side. Maybe you can just have more of a focus on, maybe it's pain that you're feeling, or maybe it's a way that you're just the differences in one run versus the others.
Yeah. And it's also conscious, I said, it's like, it's not by choice, that things are simple, but, I talked to, multi-millionaire elite Kenyan athletes who hadn't really changed much of anything. They slept in a softer bed, but like, even when they have the alternative, they don't choose it. Look at, Kipchoge, that guy has, in Kenyan terms, he's a billionaire. You know what I mean? He could do it any way he liked, but like he consciously chose to stick with the monastic lifestyle. It was fine, but he also knew it was his secret sauce. And he was smart enough not to give up his secret sauce.
There's a couple things in Chasing Mastery that I jotted down here, and you talk about the hard fun test. And I couldn't help but think that the hard fun test, does that relate to 80-20?
Yes. Yeah. Both are ratios. One quantitative, one qualitative. Yeah. I wouldn't make that overly simplistic. So like, it's not like, the 80% of your training that you do at low intensity is the fun part, and the 20% is the hard part. Because I think, just to take your question seriously, like hard fun does apply to like your training as a whole, so it's not about like any single run, or it's really not about numbers at all. Like in fact, the whole point of the hard fun test is to get you to focus on evaluating how things are going in your training. And actually what science says is the most reliable way to do so is, how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what the science shows, and it seems like, wait a minute, that's like almost anti-scientific, but it's not. It's just subjectivity. You know, like we happen to be able to feel our bodies. We happen to be able to know when we're having a good time. And lo and behold, when you try to correlate, you know, subjective perceptions about like, how hard is my training right now? How much fun am I having in my training right now? Like the answers to those questions correlate pretty well with, you know, like physiological measurements of what's going on, but they tend to be more predictive. You know, so there's, you know, been a number of studies where they'll have, you know, they'll measure everything, and then they'll crunch the numbers and to calculate like objectively how hard training is, and then they'll also ask the athletes along the way, and then they'll look at outcomes like, you know, like overreaching. And it, you know, it turns out that when an athlete, when the numbers say that the training is easy and the athlete says that the training is hard, the athlete is right. You know, the answer to that question is more predictive. It's true. It's just that is what the science says. And so that's what the hard fun test is all about. You know, it's just like guess what? You know, answering like a couple like of simple questions that you don't need any device or data to answer, like tells you more about like what track you're on than anything else. It's not one or the other. You know, the objective, the relevant metrics like HRV are great. But if you could only like take one metric to the proverbial desert island, like you would want your subjective perceptions, because properly calibrated, or if you just simply tune into them, they're more dependable.
Hey, Todd, I bet I've got something that you want.
Well, I don't know about that, Uncle Mark, but do tell.
I've got socks that will fuel your confidence. I got myself the first pair of Pair from our friends at Pair, Pairr. Let's not forget, Pair was founded by our female friends, our female twin friends, Michelle and Kim. And they are available if you want to look as cool as I do. PAIRR for the most comfortable pair of socks that you'll ever wear, with 2 R's.
And thanks to our new friends at Pair Socks, you can use the code RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. That's RUNEGADE for 15% off your order. Thanks to Kim and Michelle.
I started laughing for a little second there because unfortunately or fortunately, I wear a Garmin and I go out for a run that I say is fun. It's easy. And then the watch is telling me that it was hard and you suck. So it's almost like the science that's in this watch, I thrown it out the window a couple years ago. The only thing I love it for is just to log my runs and memories where I know where I've been around the world. But like the science and trying to like church it up and make it really fancy, the more you run and the more you start to pay attention to your surroundings and yourself, you see the dichotomy. They totally split.
Is it Garmin that's telling you that, or just Harvey texting you there?
It's Harvey.
It's more like, hey, you suck.
It's true. It's true. To juxtapose a little bit into the 80-20 running as well. And for the Renegade listeners, we have lots of new runners out there. You're well known. The 80-20 Pareto's Principle, the 80-20 running book is fantastic. I read it probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Harvey and I both read it, and we both started, trying to do this training. I'm very good at 100-0 training, not the 80-20. But maybe you could help runners, those new runners, understand the basic thesis of 80-20 running. And where do most new runners and mid-pack runners, where do we get it wrong? Like we think we're doing 80-20 running, but maybe we're not actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all at the root of it is a very simple question. Like, what is the most effective way to train for running? Intuition says, well, I should run frequently. And your intuition is right about that. Running frequently is, a best practice. But then, there's an intensity question. And even, I started running, like I said, when I was 11, completely uncoached on my own. I'm not even sure I knew the word intensity. And yet I was running at an intensity, and I was largely unconsciously, semi-consciously, like choosing a speed for my runs. So then the question becomes like, is this a good intensity? Is this a bad, like, how hard should I actually be running? Like, okay, like thumbs up, we all agree I should be running frequently, but like how hard? And I think that is where intuition just doesn't happen to jive with what's actually true. Our intuition is to kind of make every run count. And that's exactly what I did. When I was 11, I would just, I would run 6 miles every other day. Like that was my training plan. And I would push hard enough, where it was hard, but not like, I didn't really go into the pain cave either. It was like kind of neither here nor there. And I actually just kind of ran myself into a dead end that way. Cause I tried to run like each 6 miles, like at least 1 second faster than the last one. And you could, even at 11, you can only do that for so long. And like, it just gets harder and harder. And then, then it is actually a time trial, and you're still slower than you were last time. Cause you've just, put yourself in a hole of fatigue. Like, that was me at 11, but like versions of that, like happen to every untutored runner who's just going by their intuitions. And there's other hurdles as well that you have to get over. Like, if you run with other people, you tend to be pulled out of your pace. If you're on Strava, you tend to start caring what your numbers look like to other people. It just, there's some inertia around it. So there are tons of runners who've read 80-20 running and are still caught in what I call the moderate intensity rut, that neither here nor there pace. So like and I see it, like I have runners come to stay with me here in Flagstaff and train. And, they actually think they're running at low intensity. And I look at them, I know they're not. And then I look at their data. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely, I'm sorry. You're kidding yourself. So, so anyway, like that, so that is the norm, but the elites don't do that. And even the sub elites don't do it. They're actually training easier. They're running more, but they're training easier in terms of like how they distribute their intensities. So it just takes a little bit of like a leap of faith. You have to like just buy what I'm selling you, enough to give it a chance. But it is superior. It does work better. Counterintuitive though it is, like to slow down to get faster. But
it's an excellent premise, and I'm smiling here because Harvey got me into running, and when we both got the 80-20 book and we started following along, Harvey would be like, oh, I'm out doing an easy run tonight. And he's running 5:20 per kilometer, 5 minutes, 20 seconds. And then he's like, I'm doing a fast run, and he's running 5:15. Like it was like seconds between.
Now we're talking 80-20, and now it's my time to jump in. I just want to go back to what you were just talking about there, Matt. We know the premise of 80-20. I've read that book, and I honestly want to tell you, I am not a huge reader, and I tell people all the time, that book is the only book that I have ever read in my life cover to cover. So there you are.
Wow. Amazing.
So I get the idea. I get the premise. I know how the book says to set it up. But like you just said, we know how to do it, but we get it wrong. Can you give us our listeners here, a quick foolproof way to set yourself up so that you know that you're running 80-20?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I
call it the landmine. I call it the landmine test. So, I mean, first you have to, you can't trust how you feel, so I'm all about going by feel, but you have to calibrate first. And if you're caught in the moderate intensity rut, that's the whole problem. What you call easy actually isn't low intensity. So you have to put numbers on it. And you can do it by pace. Heart rate is a good way to do it. And so, a pretty safe number is like 70% of your maximum heart rate. So if you know your maximum heart rate, you just take 70% of that and you treat that as a landmine. So you go out and run, and the idea is like, if the number on your watch, showing your current heart rate exceeds that threshold, 70% of your max, you stepped on a landmine and you're dead. So it's like, because like that's where there's a little bit on the athlete here, because what a lot of athletes are doing is bullshitting themselves. Like they it's really simple, right? Like you calculate a number, the number, you respect the number, but then you go out and you just don't do it. And so like just playing like a mental exercise like that can just kind of shake you into realizing, oh yeah, I'm in total control here. And like, if I actually were going to have a leg blown off, if I exceeded this number, I would make damn sure I did not exceed that number. So it's like, it's completely within your power from day one. And when athletes are like, Matt, I just can't do it, I'm like, that is a lie. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And just treat it. Just try the landmine test. But you do need a number. So I don't know if that makes it foolproof or not, but you got to get that number.
Let's do the math. For me, I just did the math as you're talking. That's about 125 beats per minute for myself. I would say all my runs, 100%, are above 125. One thing I found, I've been doing like low heart rate training for many years now, and I found that my ability to raise my heart beat or heart rate high, I can't do it anymore. Maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe my heart's gotten a little bit bigger.
5 times bigger.
But what I used to be like, if I'd go do an easy run, I would be like 145, 155 all the time. Right now, I hover around 135. It's always about 135 beats per minute, no matter what. I'm using like a really Koros armband and stuff like that. And I do find it super easy because I'm breathing through my nose. I'm not like huffing and puffing. But that's 10 beats even lower. And it kind of goes to like something I've been reading a lot of folks who've set their personal best by doing lots of walking. And like walking would keep me below 125, like a power hike, a power walk. So the elites in context, they're spending 80% of their time below that heart rate, where 100% of my time above that heart rate, and I suck in all my marathons. So there you go. There's proof right away.
Yes. Just to clarify, the 70% number I gave you was just for the purposes of that test. So what you really want to do is just be below your first ventilatory threshold, which will be a different number depending on a lot of factors, but including fitness. So if you are a regular fit runner like your VT1 is probably closer to 80% of max. So I think you're probably within range. Like your easy runs probably actually are low intensity.
That'd be about 144, 142. Okay, that makes sense. But 5 years ago, every single one of my runs, I was way above that. Harvey knows this. We were way above this. And then now with time, it just seems to like you've built this base that you can run a lot more time at this easy effort. And I'm running like the paces I kind of feel like I want to run. I don't want to run like a 20-minute kilometer or something like that. Like I want to kind of run reasonable, like 6-minute kilometer seems to be not too bad. But that's really amazing. And we had a couple of elites on, and we always kind of ask that question. So Rachel Hanna was on our podcast. She's a great Canadian marathoner, half marathoner. And we asked her, like, what's your easy pace to you? And she's like, well, if I'm out running very easy, I'm running like 5 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer. And this is a lady who's running a 2:30 marathon. So during her workouts, she's running her marathon paces and faster. But for most of her runs, she's running 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes slower than her race pace. Like my race pace, if I'm lucky, it's 5:30 a kilometer. So like 6:30, 7 minutes, like you can kind of see that delta away. It really blows the mind about how easy the elites are actually running their easy efforts.
Yeah. And there's also, geeks like me have known that for a while, but what's kind of like new and shedding more light on all these questions are some of the big data studies where there's one I actually just happened upon quite recently, but where they take data from hundreds of thousands of runners, like Garmin users, and they can just do all kinds of correlations between training patterns and race performances. And the study I'm thinking of found that it was shocking. Like so runners like not 230 and faster did 3 times more running at low intensity in their training as anyone who finished a marathon slower than 2.5 hours. They did the same absolute amounts of moderate and high intensity training. So like even the sub elites weren't actually doing more fast miles than the slower marathoners. Like all of the difference was in all of it was in low intensity running. They just did, like the fastest runners just did a heck of a lot more low intensity. So runners who finished their marathon in less than 2.5 hours did 3 times more low intensity running than the slower marathoners, and exactly the same amount of moderate and high intensity running. So like in absolute amounts, not proportions, but in absolute amounts, they were the same. And all of the difference in their training was just a heap more low intensity miles for the faster runners.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, like I've been good at heaping lots of low intensity training miles. Now, look on the 20% though. So when you start thinking 20, a new runner might be thinking, I got to go run a 5K and puke. Like they're thinking the 20 is super hard. Help us understand what the 20 actually is.
Yes. So, the 20, it really is. I mean, you could do like 80-10-10 or 85-15 because the 20 side of that ratio lumps together moderate and high intensity training. And they're really 2 distinct intensities, but they are collectively the smaller part of the pie. And so, if you look at that full range of like the bottom end of low intensity to the high end of high intensity, that's a huge range, because remember, the boundary between low intensity and moderate is the VT1, first ventilatory threshold, which even in a really fit runner is like 80% of maximum heart rate, which like you go out and run at that intensity and you're pretty comfortable. So as soon as you go above that, you're technically at moderate intensity. So you're just like, what that really means is like you're pushing up against your body's ability to maintain homeostasis, just kind of like a metabolic equilibrium that allows you to sustain the effort. So like, that's what makes it moderate versus low intensity. But then, so like the bottom of the end of that range, like a moderate intensity effort could be sustainable for 2 hours or more if it's close to the bottom end. But it goes all the way up to the respiratory compensation point, or VT2, and which is very close to the more familiar lactate threshold. When you go above that, that's when you lose metabolic equilibrium and you're just like burning matches and exhaustion is coming. But from there, so like you cross a fit, well-trained runner is going to cross into, from moderate to high intensity at an effort like 5K pace. You know what I mean? So like even that, you're like, oh wow, I'm in high intensity now. Yes, you are actually. Physiologically, like something like 20 to 30 minutes sustainable. That's where that crossover occurs. So even there's a pretty big range from that to a full sprint. A full sprint is really only sustainable for like 8 seconds. So it's like a whole huge territory, and there's a long conversation, longer than we have time for, to be had about like, all right, like where do I hang out? Within that 20%. I mean, the shortest answer is like everywhere. I think it's just great variety is the spice of training. Like just visit all of that territory, but like do so in a way that has your eye on the specific demands of the races you're training for. So if you're an ultra runner, maybe like most of that 20% should be moderate and only a sprinkling of high intensity because your race is low intensity. And if you're more of like a 5K runner, maybe more of that 20% should be high intensity and less moderate intensity because it's more specific to the demands of your race.
That's interesting. Super interesting.
Now, do you see a problem? Sorry, Mark, there. Do you see a problem? I know that if you were to increase the high intensity, you could have either negative effects or not get any quicker. But what happens? Is there any research as far as if you spend more time in the 80% zone, say you spent 90 or 95% or even 100% in that low intensity zone, could it have negative effects on your running, or do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I mean, if the goal is to just really optimize your training for performance, you're going to end up somewhere pretty close to 80-20, whether it's 85-15 or 80-15-5, like that. You're going to be, if you just even like forget about best practices and just conduct your own experiment, which would take time. But like, that's, you would end up at something close to that ratio. I would say, and maybe this is the spirit of your question, like if you're going to err on one side or the other, I would err on the side of 90-10 or 95-5 or even 100-0, because low intensity is gentle, so like I don't, I think it's very rare for an athlete to develop like full blown overtraining syndrome doing nothing but low intensity training. I think that's actually pretty hard to do. That's where you get the expression speed kills. I mean, speed's good for you, but it's like, it's good in small doses, and you're just pretty, I mean, you can obviously become like, literally addicted to exercise and just blow past like all, the flashing red warning signs your body is giving you that you're doing too much. Yeah, you absolutely can do too much of even that, but I'm just saying it's hard. And, it just takes you most of the way to the mountaintop. Like I love moderate and high intensity, like running fast is fun for me. I love that stuff, but, proceed with caution. And just, and what you invariably find, that's why, this time of year is so interesting, because you see like all these incredible times being run on the track, like indoors. And, the ESPN or whoever will interview whoever just set a world record afterwards. And they'll say something like, "Oh, it's amazing. I haven't even started doing speed work yet." It's like, well, actually, that it's not that shocking. Like low intensity, like base training will take you most of the way to the mountaintop. And sometimes like, just adding in the other stuff just throws you right off the mountaintop. So yeah, I would, come at the optimal ratio from that direction versus doing too much high intensity. It's just a dead end. It's like, wow, I'm getting fitter so fast. And then, doesn't last very long.
Is there any kind of research, or what was your opinion on the minimum dose of the high intensity? I've read somewhere along the lines that the human body will adapt its anaerobic system in about 6 to 8 weeks. So is there something that says like the 80-20, you can actually be 100% zero for like a certain amount of time, and then for a short amount of time, start to change that ratio up? Is there any science to that? You don't actually have to do the fast running for a long, long time, or should you actually always be doing fast running? What's your thought on that?
I like the big data ones, like the one I just described, where it's, it's just, you're just collecting data from the field. And like, now that's your laboratory. I often find more value in that, because they have to make things like so artificially simplified in the scientific environment. So, always as an athlete, again, like goes back to my best practices orientation, like one eye on science, but like more my better eye on like what's actually working in the real world. So, I mean, you could ask, 10 different coaches that question and get, not exactly the same answer from everyone. I know this. But, my philosophy is, you should pretty much always keep like the super high end stuff in the mix, especially as you're getting older. So it's just like, it's a stress test. Like when you are sprinting full on, like especially up a hill or something, that is very stressful. Like when you're a kid and you do it, you don't think of that. When you're my age and you do it, you're like, wow, you know what I mean? Just like,
we try to avoid the hills.
yeah.
Just looking at them.
It's like a 1970s Russian spacecraft just like shuddering as it like makes re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. It's just like, ah. But like, but if you do that, like that starts to go away, and you're like, wow, I've really like tightened some bolts here. So like, I think like even in base training, you just want to like never go too long without sprinting and doing other stuff that's like just really dynamic and explosive and as hard as you can go, because speaking of doses, like tiny little doses of that make a huge difference. And so from a risk management perspective, I mean, you win on both sides. Like doing it makes you more durable, but you can do it in small enough doses that the dose itself isn't really much of a risk to you. And it just keeps your chassis in order. And it just gives you a lot of options, because like if you're doing like, 98% low intensity and like 2% explosive, it's so much easier and less risky to start layering in the stuff in between. Whereas if like, you're like, wow, I haven't done anything faster than, 75% of maximum heart rate in 9 weeks. Well, guess what? Your body decided to get really bad at doing anything else. And it's going to be, it's not going to feel really good, to start adding that stuff back in.
Keep that speed. That's what I'm hearing. So Harvey, come on, we got to get our speed back.
Got to get back at it.
It's fun too. It's fun. Like kids don't jog, kids sprint. You know what I mean?
It's true. It's true.
So I've got a question. So this is a little bit of a pivot, but just take us to that moment when long COVID changed running for you. So what was the hardest part of that? And then how did it also change your view of success?
Yeah. I first noticed something just was weirdly not right with me. The nice thing about being a runner is that it's kind of your canary in the coal mine. If something is wrong with your health, you'll often notice it. It'll manifest when you're running first. And that's definitely what happened with me. I just, biffed like 3 straight interval workouts. Like I was like in a really good groove. I had gotten COVID and gotten like really sick at the beginning of 2020, and then appeared to make a full recovery. And I was just like hungry to get my fitness back, and it was going great. And then all this weird stuff started to happen. And, just like put 2 and 2 together, self-diagnosed long COVID. And, this is still early. We're talking October 2020. And like, there were articles and things were bubbling up about this condition. And the more I learned, the more I realized like, A, this is serious, and B, I might be a lifer. Like this might never go away, because it appeared to be just the latest post-viral chronic fatigue type of illness. And like I knew people who had that for decades. And so that was sort of like the moment of just reckoning, where I'm like, well, I should just start coping, basically. And for me, like I'm a natural catastrophizer, so it actually wasn't like that. It wasn't that hard for me to just at least cognitively accept the reality. In fact, I almost prefer to assume the worst and just, okay, like I can't be disappointed at this point. So I just kind of like, I think I even sounded pessimistic to people, but like, it wasn't really that. It just like, I wanted to put my energy into, it was kind of a hedge. My thought was like, if I am going to stay sick, then I want to be as happy as I can be, because there are people living with chronic illnesses everywhere. And you like, if that's your lot, you still want to feel like you have a chance at happiness. So, for me, just like letting go of running, I didn't do it all at once. I just kind of incrementally retreated. But I saw that like, no matter how much I gave up, I was just getting sicker and sicker. And, some of the only people I knew who seemed to be like recovering were people who had stopped, so that also just got me to it, like just kind of embrace stopping. For a long time, it looked like, I had run my last mile. It was hard. I think I did find a way to like still be happy, but also, as I describe it, I'm writing a memoir about this whole saga called Dying to Run. And it's not really about running. It's like, what does running do for me? And like, I can't run. So like, what else can I do that will do for me what running used to? And that was helpful. But it like, what I realized is like, no, there was something like absolutely specific about running that I've lost and I can't replace. So I must accept that too.
And then when you think about that, Matt, I listened to a couple podcasts that you were on. I think you said you battled it for almost 4 years and then you got back into running. Do you remember that first run where you finally felt that you've come to terms with it, or you've overcome it, or just able to cope with it better? And snap out. Like, how did it feel? Like, how wonderful or how terrible was that feeling?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the watershed was the very decision to start running without recovering. Like that was because I had the fantasy, I think, that most people would have in my place. It's like, I'm going to beat this thing. Mm-hmm. And, once I have my health back, then I'm going to get my fitness back and I'm going to finish unfinished business as a runner. Like that was my fantasy. But, then like 1 year turned into 2 years, turned into 3 years, and I wasn't getting better. And it finally sunk in. Like if you're going to finish unfinished business, you have to just do it anyway, like sick. So, so I signed up for the longest race I had ever attempted, because that's where my unfinished business was. I had started a 100-kilometer race and DNF'd shortly before I got sick, thinking I would have other chances. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to do like one last race, it can't just be a 5K. It has to be longer than I ever ran when I was healthy. The distance I failed at when I was healthy. And I told my family and friends thought I had lost my mind. But I told them like, and I was being honest, like, I think I have like a 10% chance of making it to the start line, so like, so it's not about pulling it off. It's about choosing to do it anyway. and so that whole year, I signed up for the race literally at midnight on New Year's Eve, because that's when registration opens. So like literally, that was 2024. So like, as soon as I woke up on New Year's Day, everything was different. Like I was still sick, like I still had lost like all my fitness, but I just felt different because I was committed to kind of like just fighting back, you know what I mean? And just like spitting in the eye of my disease. Like, I'm just going to do the thing you've told me I can't do. But I tried, so it was kind of like an insane goal that I tried to pursue as sanely as possible. So I really, because for me, it was like just kind of like even like an intellectual challenge. It's like, wow, it's really stacked against me here. But like, if anyone can figure this out, it's me. You know what I mean? The guy who's been like running for decades and written so many books and coached so many people, it's like, like I have something to bring to this fight. And so, I didn't run a step for like the first 6 weeks. It was like all walking. Cause like I knew what happened the last time I tried to run, and I'm like, I can't just like fall into a pit, on day one of this thing. So I took my time, and like the first bit of running, you just have to be absurdly cautious. So it was like, when I'd gotten up to like walking 40 miles in a week, so like 70K, That's a lot of walking. And, I'd lost some weight and I was feeling a little different. Then I'm like, now I feel like I can take the chance of easing in a little bit of running. And it was like 8 times 30 seconds at like, barely faster than walking. But, getting back to your question, like that was as good as it got for me. Like, like no matter how much progress I made after that, like I was doing it like that. Like I was technically running, you know what I mean? I was doing it anyway. And I did make a lot of progress from there, but like, it was just like the rewards were infused in the entire process from the very beginning.
Were you able to enjoy crossing the 100-kilometer finish line for a second and to look back how far you came in that year, 2024, and the years before battling long COVID? Like walk us through when you crossed that line. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I fell onto the ground and started bawling, and like I am not the crying type, and definitely not the public crying type. Like I'm very, you read a quote from Marcus Aurelius at the top, but like, like Stoic philosophy has been kind of a lifeline to me in this journey. Like I know it's like bro philosophy and stuff, but like you can't help when you need a lifeline, you don't care if it's like trendy, you know what I mean? Like it helped.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I think,
we need our bros from 2000 years ago.
So, but like for me, I would never want it to be a posture. Like I would want to, like really just like buy in and prove it, with like, with how I actually comport myself. And so, I did an okay job of that, but, I think I was holding a lot of emotion, like dammed up inside me, and the dam broke when I crossed that finish line because, I think the Stoicism like really helped me get to that point, but it was a lot. I think when you make a conscious effort to like be Stoic, true Stoicism isn't about denying your emotions, but still, like when you're doing your best. I mean, I'm not Marcus Aurelius. Like I just read what he wrote, believed it, and like tried to act on it, but like it was kind of messy, and I didn't do it great. And so I think I ended up just like kind of like suppressing things and not even like realize. I mean, it's trauma. This is what we're talking about. Like you go through something when people are like, "What's it like?" I say it's like you're 30% dead all the time. Like that's awful. Like just feeling like deeply uncomfortable all day, every day. It's a tough way to live. And like, I did what I needed to do to not, just crack up like under the weight of that. But it did, there was like stuff I needed to process that I had not fully processed. And, I think, like that's what crossing the finish line felt. It felt like catharsis, you know what I mean? Where, I could just like let go and just feel all the feels of the whole catastrophe. So yeah, it was a powerful personal moment.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Matt. It's crossing a finish line and then having a moment to yourself to realize the gravity of the situation. And now with long COVID, is it running in your rearview mirror now? Are you still battling it, or have you just come to terms and you're just training different and living different now?
Yeah, it's one thing after another. So yeah, I made like a lot of progress in 2024, and I really was not thinking beyond that 100-kilometer race, because like I said, I gave myself a 10% chance of even making it there. But then like I not only started it but finished it. And, being me, I'm like, now what? And so
I can see Matt signed up for a couple 100-milers, I heard.
Yes. And so, yeah, I promptly signed up for the 100-mile version of the same race and made a ton of progress last year. Ended up getting a stress fracture right before the 100-miler and wasn't able to run it. But for me, like complicating matters is also I have like a bad heart now, which is like, I think partly related to just abusing my body with I mean, this endurance training and racing are safe for most people, but there are for some people who just like, middle-aged males who've been getting after it like pretty hard for decades. Like, it's not uncommon to develop good old-fashioned heart disease, even without any other risk factors at all. And I wouldn't even maybe know to this day that I had it if not for just all the testing that was done around the long COVID. Because it was like long COVID, I had 35 symptoms. I documented them. The heart disease, 0. So it just, happened to be discovered as a comorbidity. And for me, it was kind of a sideshow because the long COVID, which is what was really affecting my quality of life. But when I started really being able to train hard again, I thought, I need to follow up on this because like 5 years have passed. It is progressive. So I had follow-up testing and it was not good news, like at all. Like it's progressing pretty rapidly. And I'm pretty sure now that like that stress fracture was related to poor circulation, like peripheral artery disease. So like, yeah, I'm kind of falling apart, but I still don't know. Yeah. And so like I've signed up for the 100-miler again, but I have to go under a cardiologist's orders.
Maybe just to transition one more time. I know that at the front end of when we first started chatting, we had mentioned that we had a little bit of a game. If you're willing to partake in something, Todd, do you want to leave that off?
This is going to be horrendous. This is going to be like every single one of my marathons, but we'll give it a try here. Okay, it's a pretty easy game. We're going to call it Pareto's Principles to play off of 80-20. And maybe just kind of get your thoughts. I'm going to read a Pareto principle, an 80-20 principle, and you tell me if you agree. Tell us if you disagree with it. Okay, so the first one here, would you agree or disagree? 20% of your shoes get 80% of the miles you run.
Yes.
We're runners. We like to have lots of running shoes.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I thought so too. I was thinking about that. I'm always picking my favorite running shoe, and it always seems to be the same pair or types of running shoes. Okay, we'll get a little deeper here. Does 20% of a long run give you 80% of the benefits?
Probably.
So we don't need to run 25 milers.
Well, because like there's all the fine print. Like if you do enough of them.
It's true. I got one here. 20% of your training days results in 80% of the race day performance.
Not true.
Not true? Okay, an untrue one. That's good.
Because if like the 100-0 thing could possibly work, it wouldn't work that way. You know what I mean? It's like...
It would have worked. Okay, here's one. The last 20% of the marathon is 80% the effort.
Yes.
That's true. It's almost like 99% of the effort, I would say.
Yes.
20% of your running buddies makes 80% of your group runs better.
That's another problem. Probably. I would like more time to think it through, but probably.
Or they drag you along too fast.
It's true. That's, I don't know, Mark or Harvey, do you have any Pareto principles that bubbled into your brain?
No, I don't on my side.
No.
But I do have a question too. So first of all, thank you again for taking time out of your day to be with us. Just wanted to ask, so across your mental focus books, you emphasize that true mastery comes from process over outcome. How has this belief shaped your coaching of the Dream Run, or at Dream Run, and especially when working with runners who may never hit a personal best, but want to master the running journey?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, when runners come to Dream Run, like I am a very process focused person. Like I am as an athlete, I am as a writer, I am as a coach, and so that's what athletes experience when they come here. I am, setting them up for success with the conditions of the training we do. I'm advising them on like what the purpose of the session is and what it means to get the most out of it. And I'm not talking a lot about, performance numbers, or, like your goal. Like, and in fact, like if I see an athlete who seems to be like more focused on the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow than they are on the rainbow, like I will steer them, sometimes just subliminally, but sometimes just like be here now. And so it's the way the pros operate. When I did my fake pro runner thing and it was me dropping into their environment, that was the culture. I could just see it, like taking care with every step like that. It's not, they weren't talking about like who had the best split for the rep. It was like, how do we execute this session correctly? And so, yeah, it's just like, it really is like sort of like a coach sets a tone for a culture that can kind of self-perpetuate as athletes cycle through.
That's wonderful. Matt, we can't thank you enough. As an author, we love your books. We love the topics that you explore. Like I said earlier, they link to your life journey, your running journey, and it's made us and our listeners be better runners. And it's helped all our lives. And we thank you for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Life can be hard, and we like to say the Renegade podcast can help. You know what also can help? Something truly transformative? Jesse Itzler's Running Man Festival. This isn't just an event. It's a 3-day immersion at Kingston Downs in Rome, Georgia, where you craft your own running adventure, sweat it out in the saunas, flow through yoga, absorb wisdom from world-class speakers, and vibe to live music under the stars. It's about recalibrating your mind, your body, and spirit in a community of like-minded souls, pushing boundaries. Jesse, if this resonates across the ether, I'm putting it out there. We'd be honored to join the tribe in September, sharing stories and inspiration. And if you're tuned in and you're connected to Jesse, whisper a kind word our way. Let's co-create this. Let's manifest. Dive deeper at runningmanfestival.com and connect with the Renegade. We're on YouTube, Instagram, on X, or shoot us an email, renegadepodcast@gmail.com. For more on endurance, mindset, and the path less traveled, stay tuned, stay inspired.
We thank you for listening to the Renegade Podcast. Each episode, we dare to practice the lost art of conversation to better understand this thing we call life and the human connection that we have with running and endurance sport. If you enjoy the Renegade Podcast, could we ask for a favor? Head on over to our YouTube and click subscribe, and like our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your engagement helps keep the Renegade Podcast growing and going. If you have a show idea, a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, runegadepodcast@gmail.com. That's RUNEGADE podcast@gmail.com. We have a great list of guests coming up that we're looking forward to sharing another conversation with you. Head on over to our link tree, check out our sponsors, our friends of the podcast. We have great discount codes that, thanks to them, they're offering you, the Renegade listeners, to save some money on the best running gear, apparel, fuel, and nutrition. We thank you for listening. And remember, in a world of runners, be a renegade.